Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and I'm here with the Nerdarchy crew today.
I'm Ted.
And I'm Dave.
Indeed.
And today we're going to be continuing our series, actually, about, looking back at the different editions of Dungeons & Dragons and the covers.
But first, we do that. What about the newsletter?
So if you guys want to jump down to the description below, sign up for the newsletter. It's a great way to get gaming tips delivered straight to your email about once a week, as well as find out how to game with Nerdarchy.
Indeed.
So, back to the content. So, we're continuing now in our stroll through memory lane with these books and each edition and what they meant to us and even, just what the covers of these books invoke in us as players.
Now, third edition represented a major change in D&D.
Yeah, I drug Ted in the third edition kicking and screaming.
Oh, I did not know that.
Absolutely. There were so many things that were different from second to third, and once I started playing, it was still just D&D, so there really wasn't a problem. But I was at a time where finances weren't exactly great. I was a early college student, whatever it was, and looking at the 30, 40, 50 second edition books that I had, it's like, I don't want to go rebuy all of these things. I don't want to do this. I don't want to learn any new rules. What, my character with the 1800 or 1894 strength, you're not going to let me convert to a 23? What's wrong with you, Dave? So many things that it was just like everything about bringing my character.
Well, with this switch of editions, for the first time, they did a lead up to it. I believe this is Wizards of the Coast at this point, right?
Yes. This is Wizards of the Coast.
At this point. And what they did is through Dragon Magazine, they did a teaser like every month for like 6 months to a year. I don't remember exactly what it was. So I had been reading about this edition over and over again, every month up until it released. And I'm like, oh my God, this stuff is so cool. There's so many cool options. You can build your character like never before. This is going to be amazing. There's a uniform system for monsters and magic items.
Yeah, and I would argue this edition was amazing. I think this did a lot. This did things for the game that had never been done before, and I really feel like kind of catapulted it into the modern day.
And that's what I was saying. There's so many big changes between second and third. And while yes, I was drug kicking and screaming, there is a lot that I love about this edition. There's so many things that is like, I talked in the second edition video how I hated the unbalanced character classes and the differences in XP gain. This changed that. It's like, okay, well, you need 2,000. It brought the thief up, it brought the wizard down, and it balanced you out. And I'm like, oh, this is really great. And it did all of these things that I was so impressed with. Oh, you want to play a monster? Here's how. Well, you gotta remember, I love the Complete Humanoid's Handbook, and now you're giving me the ability
so good.
to play things. Oh, so you have to deal with an ECL. All right, so I'm not gonna play a troll or a giant, but how about this or how about that?
Yeah, no, orc or hobgoblin, very within the realm of possibility.
I loved the your campaign where I got to play a bugbear. That was fantastic. So like all of these things that you could do, and now we're talking about templates. That changes things even more, because not only could you be like, hey, can I get a template for an ECL? But templates could be added as a story reward or campaign reward, and hey, it happens.
And you make old monsters new monsters, and there's so much going on with that. But, and we haven't even scratched the OGL, which was released in this edition.
I'm really glad you brought that up. So there's a guy in here. I'm really glad you brought that up. His name is Ryan Dancy. And he, we all love this game. And he is the brand manager, right? Brand manager. What kind of a weird title is that for a role-playing game? That dude was brilliant. He did the OGL, the Open Gaming License. And he said, we're going to take Dungeons & Dragons and open it up. And it changed the industry. It brought a lot of new, Green Ronin, some of these other companies, they got a lot of momentum from being able to play
Swords and Sorcery.
Yeah, Swords and Sorcery. Tons and tons of, in my opinion, of fantastic, brilliant game writers and game designers today.
Now, I will say, with that OGL, there was a flood well, I was going to say a flood of extra content, and as a DM, you really needed to be able to sift through that to find out what was balanced, what was going to work, and that part was incredibly important, because while I started playing in second edition, I don't think I started DMing until third.
Yeah.
Do you?
Sounds about right.
So like I couldn't recall, but I don't think
with
I've
our
ever
group
run.
anyway.
Yeah,
so.
and you know that
Wow, I
any
did not
any
know that.
any serious DMing I had done in second edition wasn't serious DMing. It was
Kinda
with a
toeing
bunch
the pool, yeah.
with a bunch of people, and it wasn't here's a campaign, here's the story. Like it was literally joke stuff, more along the lines of just narrative. What do we want to do? Not really. Let's plan a campaign with challenges and monsters
And story.
well, I mean, there was a story that I did, but it wasn't a challenging ongoing campaign. It was more like, hey, we got a couple hours to kill. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
But with this edition, I really, I dove in. There was so many things that I got to experience from the DM side of the table. I spent time poring over books, playing with templates and really doing so many things. There was literally, just for shits and giggles, because I love templates that much, I spent 6 hours with every single book trying to create the most templatist thing I could that wound up being like a challenge rating 71 with 30 different templates.
Yeah. Those were the,
Just because I felt like doing it. It was ridiculous. But that was just how much I was into the hobby, and I wanted something to do. So it was just great. We talked about wanting to review the covers.
Yeah.
And the covers make a drastic change from second to third. We're used to seeing artwork and more of what will you experience while playing, whereas these books resemble like tomes.
Yeah,
that would actually be in the world.
Yeah.
Right. I get the idea that like they were saying, hey, you see the cover on this? This is what you pull out of a chest, and golden coins trickle onto the ground when you open the chest. Like, and this is what a wizard would keep their spell books in. Or this book contains, when it's open, it opens a portal to another world. This, this book summons creatures.
Now,
there's an eye on the cover of that thing.
I had made mention in the other videos that the iconic monster is the red dragon. And
Yeah.
I have to say that that's probably supposed to be a red dragon
that
eye.
is, and red dragon skin, scales, absolutely.
And that's the closest you get in symbology between the three. But this is the first monster manual or monstrous manual that doesn't have the red dragon on the cover to show that iconic monster.
And I believe every book Watts released in third edition had some semblance of a tome. Even if they included art on the cover, the rest of it, the jacket had that tome look to it. Like that was pretty iconic throughout the edition.
And it made that edition stand out. And while second had been around for a long time, they were making all these changes with third, and third lasted equally in my gaming history. Third lasted the longest of what I had been playing. So I look back and much of my gaming history is in these pages, and the artwork isn't too far advanced beyond what you see in second edition, and some of these images have carried through over the years, with maybe just a different a different artist doing it, but you can clearly see that likeness goes from edition to edition.
What's interesting too is the other two editions we talked about. I talked about how I had to collect them. These were not collected. These were purchased at a friendly local gaming store in Claymont, Delaware. Between Books 2.0 is still there, and each one of these was bought from Greg, the shop owner there, and each one of these books sat at probably well over 100 hours of gameplay easily, maybe 200 hours of gameplay. There have been dice rolled on these, characters scrawled on these. These are really precious. These are I remember tactilely, just turning the pages in these. I also feel quite ashamed in like, this thing is ragged. This is my PHP. My DMG is a little bad. This thing looks untouched, which is the reason why that is I'm so bad at using monsters. I'm always using NPCs as monsters, and so it tells me I should have done a better job of using the monster manual better and gone deeper into it. It's really funny.
I love monsters. It's one of the things that draws me to this game. I like using them. I like creating them. I like playing them as a player character. It's one of the reasons why I love Dragonborn so much. And that got teased, I believe, at the end of this edition and got a highlight in fourth. But it's like, oh, here is a monstrous race right in the core book.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we touched on the OGL, but I don't think we talked about it enough. I
agree. I'm glad to return to it.
It did two things for this industry.
Big deal.
It opened up to other companies the ability to create content for this very game.
Exactly.
And it also created whole new games for people to play based off of these mechanics.
Off the OGL, exactly.
Everyone,
Vampire... tons and tons of games were converted.
Well, it was referred to as just the D20 system.
The D20 system,
and
D20 Modern.
You actually have it, right here on the back of every book.
It looks like a square, and it really was something.
It just says D20 system. Yeah. And those mechanics were, as Dave says, it would literally catapulted all of these different things.
Even Watts did their own take on different versions of this system. They did, the Alternity system.
Alternity. You're exactly right.
They did, which is the futuristic version of D&D.
Like a space opera. Yeah, absolutely.
They did D&D Modern.
Yep. GURPS had it too. I think there was a little bit of crossover where Steve Jackson Games actually made some D20 product for a little while. There are just tons and tons of games that went through a D20.
Yeah, Green Rodent put out a bunch of stuff. They created their own superhero game based off the D20 system. Yeah. Which is, to this day, one of my favorite systems to play.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd really want to just talk about Ryan Dancy a little bit more. He was really responsible for the OGL and the concept of let's open the game. And what I think is amazing is it's just my opinion that the OGL was an experiment, and it was an experiment that failed. So 4th edition and 5th edition have really walked away from the OGL, and it's not the same. You can't create content the way you did for them.
Well, but I don't think the OGL failed. I think it took, in my opinion, and I know some people that agree with me, that it was actually an astounding success. So much so that it was actually taking money away from Watts, because by saying okay, well, we're gonna make this thing, so here's the rules, go buy these books and you can use these rules in any game that you want. And now people are saying, well, I'm allowed to talk about this stuff, I'm allowed to use this stuff, so I'm going to do my own thing. And all these companies are springboarding off of it. Other companies that were up and coming or had never been heard of before, and now it's like, all right, let's jump on it. So people aren't spoiled for choice. They're not spoiled for choice. They can get anything and everything. So when you've got a hobby that's generally only a couple people in the group are spending money, not everybody is buying every single book, you have to be like, okay, well, what am I going to spend my money on? Am I going to buy the Swords and Sorcery book? Am I going to buy the Green Ronin book? Am I going to buy the Watts book? Am I going to go buy this book over here? You only have so much disposable income. Most of the people who play this game are wealthy executives who are going to buy literally everything that comes off the printing press. So it hurt them in the long run. It helped out a lot of other companies, and it did a lot for the hobby. But they're like, when 4th edition came around, they're like, yeah, that ain't gonna happen again.
I feel like their perception of how it hurt them is far greater than how it did. Because me as a GM and a player, I would always buy from Watts before any other company because they put out a superior product. Yeah. There were so many other companies that you had to actually look at the stuff before you let it in your game, because there was a very few companies that I'd be like, I'll put that in my game.
And Green Ronin was one of them.
Green Ronin was pretty good, although I wasn't as involved with them back then. I think they did like Skullport and stuff. Mongoose was the biggest one that
Mongoose, I'd forgotten them.
that I would get products from, and their stuff was pretty good, pretty balanced. And also Swords and Sorcery, which was White Wolf.
I like the Swords and Sorcery books, and I actually bought all of the ones that I had seen. But there were a lot of stuff, it was like 4 different monster manuals, and there were a lot of monsters in those books that are like, yeah, this just doesn't add up. Like the challenge rating system, it was designed, challenge monster, there are challenge rating 3 was designed for a 3rd level party. And there were some times that those numbers were just so off that I'm like, where did they do their research?
Was there a D20 Traveler? I think there might have been.
I just want to say everybody at that point put out a D20 game.
Yeah, it was all over. It's hard to even just remember how impactful it was. Now, when I say it was a failure, I was really upset when the OGL was shut down in 4th, and I was like, oh, that experiment didn't work. And the only reason when I say failure, when you hear Scott Garibay say failure, that somebody failed, it's actually a massive compliment, because I really feel like now more and more people don't fail because they are not swinging for the frickin' fences. And Ryan Dancy swung for the fences, and he changed the industry, he changed the hobby, and so as a brand manager, I think his impact was as much as Monty Cook. Monty Cook Monty Cook was launched from 3rd edition. He did Patolis, and Monty Cook's name is in here. That guy just finished Numenera. He had the biggest Kickstarter in the world, and his roots are right here in this 3rd edition book.
He also did the D20 World of Darkness book as well.
Absolutely.
He's actually in in the monster manual. He is the
that's
second.
Exactly right.
He's the second name.
Listed. And then there's another name below here that's huge. Peter Adkinson, additional design, right? Yep. Peter Adkinson was he was the starter of Wizards of the Coast. That guy dealt directly with, I think he bought Magic the Gathering from Richard Garfield, and his name is in the Dungeons and Dragons book. Magic the Gathering is a multi-million-dollar, game now, and it's an entire, side run. So D&D is just so
also
it's tentacles.
Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah, Wizards of the Coast. And so it's really ingrained. There's a heritage to this game that spans hundreds of men and women who have really launched entire careers off of just touching D&D, which I think is really interesting.
Well, and not only that, too, what else did 3rd edition do? It launched Pathfinder.
Amen. You're exactly right.
The end of the era of 3rd edition launched Pathfinder.
Right. So here you could see this is 3.5. Tell me if Pathfinder is at 3.75. That's exactly what it is. And Pathfinder made no less than 12, 14, 16 books that are gorgeous, beautiful additions to Dungeons and Dragons, an entire additional branch. Reynolds, one of the artists it's just amazing.
Before you go on, I know if there's any of you, serious Pathfinder watchers or Pathfinder players watching this, you don't need to, fill the comments with Pathfinder is not D&D. I know there's so many people who think it's its own thing, and I'm not gonna argue. It's just people get it in their heads that Pathfinder is its own separate thing, but it really did. It really did leap
spring
off of
from
this.
the loins of 3rd edition,
and it became its own thing, and it's very different from the rules presented here, and it went in its own direction. And for those that love it, great.
But if you think it would have existed without these books, you got another thing coming. I'm not sure it would have. Yeah, definitely. So but these are really special, and there's just so many names attached to it and so much history. I think, it's hard for me to say. I would say my favorite edition is 5th, but 3.5 is probably my second. And
I will agree with that. Yeah, there was a difference between 3.0 and 3.5. They really had to go in and fix up some of their cleanup.
Oops.
And it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to say, what? Hey, this didn't work out well. And for those of us that have been around the bell, I've got all of my 3.0 books and I've got all my 3.5 books. As I said, this is the edition that I played the longest. until, fifth has been around a long enough time to combat this. That's what it's going to be.
Also, I just wanted to call out too, like you talked about, this can be an expensive hobby. It really can. And if you're blessed to have the resources, it's great. But if you don't have the resources to have a whole bunch of rule books and things like that, you will find these fifth edition, third edition. You will find these in libraries. I see them all the time. And if you have a library card, you can get every single version. You can have them for 3 weeks. You can renew them for another 3, and you can get out there and you can run some great games with these old books. And so I really am excited that these books this version can still be found in libraries, which is really exciting to me. Yeah.
That is good stuff. So, what about you guys out there? Do you, did you play third?
Are you still playing third?
Do you still play third? Do you have any cool stories that you feel like sharing?
Do you love Ryan Dancy?
Put it in the comments below while you're at it. Like, share,
you want to fight with Ted over Pathfinder?
I'm not gonna fight. I promise.
I called it 3.75. Bring it on.
Yeah, Pathfinder is D&D spite baby.
I think Pathfinder is absolutely D&D 3.75. That's my take. So I'll take the brush on that one. Yeah. Okay.
You guys can hang out with us over on Facebook.
So until next time, stay nerdy.